And welcome, everyone. And thank you so very much for your time and attention. My name is Dedrick Sneed. I'm the founder, creator, and owner operator of Subsume Media here in Atlanta, Georgia. And myself and good friends and compatriots, I go by the creative brand Subsume. The word Subsume, and I've just get a chance to wear my new fancy jacket. For those who follow me know what happened to the last one. Long and short, Subsume is a creator-based platform that is the intersection of technology, creativity, and community. And what we're looking to do is create the best outcomes for people in creative and technology careers. And we do that by looking to tell authentic stories through agency, through license, and through experiences across cultures, across language, and across boundaries. So with that, we're into animation, we're into games, we're into technology, and we're mainly into the communities that we look to be a part of and hope to serve. So we look at creativity as a social endeavor, as a technology construct, and as a way to connect with our own humanities. And so, with that, we have a fantastic 3-day presentation that we are dubbing as Creative Juneteenth. And I came up with this notion of creative Juneteenth, of course, kind of in homage to our newly minted federal holiday of Juneteenth. Of course, understanding that this is a celebration that was part of a process of the enslaved African Americans and people within the African diaspora that were brought to this country. And so, of course, while that was only one part of a continuing struggle, we wanted to first off pay our homage and appreciation, not only for that struggle, but what it took to envision yourself in the space, in a place that initially did not include you, but that you were looking to be included in, and make sure that your legacies and your stories were part of the next parts to be told. And I thought, what a creative mind that our ancestors had to have to be able to imagine a future that they themselves may not be able to be a part of, that even their current the current living generations might not be a part of, but that there was a tomorrow that they did find themselves to be included. And of course, our motto is to stay included with Subsume. And with that, we want to make sure that we honor that past, also are impactful in the present, and have a shared future together, where our stories and our legacies are always appreciated and given with agency. So with this, the idea of Creative Juneteenth is to honor that spirit and to find the most creative and expressive points of self that we can share our stories, share our communities, and share the best of ourselves. So without further ado, we have a fantastic set of programs coming up. Right here at the top of the hour at 7 o'clock, we're going to be joined by some fantastic authors and I've actually got the book right here among my little list of here, Tales of Wakanda, the legacy of the Black Panther, that was curated as a news telling of the traditional Marvel stories, but brought in from a lens of brilliant creators throughout the diaspora that have taken the prose to expand among the stories of Wakanda itself. And so we'll be talking with several of those authors here in just a moment. Thereafter, we'll also be looking to bring in the NFT and art space, looking to bring those together in our digital space with Subsume. So for those who are joining us on the live stream, you can enjoy this program in addition to connect with us in Gamer Jive, which is a digital platform that we'll be using to have live text, video, and chat, but also to have you engage with each other in a more personal but virtual space. And so with that, as we look to work towards this as future endeavors, we'll be using that as a secondary platform, but that way you can vend and also connect throughout the whole points of this conversation. And then we'll also follow this up with our streaming of a film called Tasmanian Devil. And this is one of a series of new films that we'll be able to showcase within the Gamer Jive space, where you'll be able to go into that movie theater and see exclusive footage from some of the best independent and emerging filmmakers that we selected for our inaugural Subsume Film Festival. So with that, we'll get ready to bring up to the stage Miss Kim McMillan. So we'll go ahead and get this started as we'll look to bring her and our eclectic authors into that. So Kim, how are you? Welcome to Creative Juneteenth. Kyoko and Jesse and Linda and Glenn, everybody. How are you doing today? Okay, everybody, you may have you muted, but we'll go ahead and look to bring.
There we go. How you doing, everybody?
Sure give you all of your time as we look to go ahead and bring these things forward. We will go ahead and do that as I move off stage, and we're going to turn this over to Kim. So Kim, thank you so very much. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we want to go ahead and bring you into the world of Wakanda. So I'll turn it over to Kim. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much. You know, I want to start first by just thanking you, Dedrin. He, as a founder of Subsum, what you're doing is just so important. And for us to be doing this the day after Joe Biden signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act into law is a real honor. I think most people understand what Juneteenth is about, but just in case, is commemorated on the anniversary date of June 19th, 1865, when General Gordon Granger made the official Juneteenth National Independence Day, and historically known as Jubilee Day, Black Independence Day, and Emancipation Day. It's a holiday in the United States. The holiday commemorates the end of slavery and is regularly observed with celebrations of African American culture. It originated in Galveston, Texas in 1866. It has been celebrated annually on June 19th throughout the United States. It was recognized as a federal holiday, of course, yesterday. And we're thrilled. But what I wanted to also say is that what I find so much that opens my heart is that on the date of June 19th, 1865, announcement of General Order Number 3 by Union Army General Gordon Granger proclaiming the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. That is so, can you imagine if you're a slave in those fields and someone comes up to you very unexpectedly and says, you're no longer a slave? And I don't know if I could even grasp that. But what we're going to work to do today is talk about Black Panther, Tales of Wakanda, and what is the meaning. And not only what is that meaning, what is the cultural significance of Black Panther as we commemorate and talk about Black independence and freedom. We're going to discuss issues of freedom and self-determination as it pertains to the author's works and what Wakanda stands for in their lives and their art. Now, I want to start off with the man, the editor of Black Panther, Jesse J. Holland. He's the author of The Black Panther, Who is a Black Panther, a prose novel which was nominated for an NAACP Image Award in 2019. His story in Black Panther, Tales of Wakanda, is titled Faith, and is about T'Challa having to face his God and her only begotten daughter for the right for Black Panthers now and in the future to rule Wakanda. Now, Jesse, the theme of what does Wakanda mean is so strong in your story. Can you talk to us about freedom and self-determination as it pertains to your work? And I would love you to also read a segment of your work. Particularly, I loved your depiction of Bast's daughter, Nefertiti. So I would love for our audience to just learn a little bit about her and how important she was to your story.
First of all, I want to say thank you, Kim, for that great introduction. It's always great to be with my fellow Black Panther writers. And for all of you out there, go out and pick up Black Panther Tales of Wakanda for it on sale now. You always got to do the pitch first. Okay.
Thank you.
Now let's get to the question. So one of the things that really resonates about the Black Panther and Wakanda, especially to us as African Americans, is that they are unconquered. They have never been colonized. They are what they are because that's the way they wanted it to be. And I think for us as African Americans who have for so many years been at the mercy of others' whims, I think it's something that we all yearn for. We all yearn to know what we would have been if not for the interference of someone else.
Yes.
So when we think of Wakanda, I think we have a little bit of yearning of what we could have been and what we can be now as we, as African Americans, learn and grow and start determining our own future. We start seeing ourselves as, let's just say it, Wakandans. People who are strong, proud, and able to determine what we want to be and not be what someone else says you have to be. So I think you see a lot of that when it comes to Black Panther and Wakanda. Now, I was the editor of Black Panther Tales of Wakanda, and I had the exquisite pleasure to work with the writers you see here on screen and the others who are part of Black Panther Tales of Wakanda. But of course, I myself am a writer as well. So of course I had to throw a little bit of my own stuff in there. So I decided to write a story that talked about the faith that T'Challa, the Black Panther, has in his God and his country. So in the story, aptly titled Faith, T'Challa has a conversation with his god Bast and finds out that Bast has a child. And the question comes up whether blood is thicker than faith. Who does Bast love more? Her avatar as the Black Panther or her own child? And who does she give Wakanda to? So that's what I explore a little bit in the story Faith. And I'm going to read just a little bit from Faith to you. So you can see what Bast's child, who is named Nefertiti, was like. So Nefertiti, as a demigod, has the one thing that T'Challa does not: actual superpowers. So I'll read a little bit of Nefertiti's transformation. Nefertiti grinned again. Yeah, Mom told me all about your heart-shaped herbs and the power they give you, she snorted. Don't you find it strange that a god who visits you regularly never shares any of her actual power, that you have to rely on chemistry and horticulture to do what she tells you to do? Suddenly, her demeanor becomes darker, more menacing. Bast is the Lady of Dread and the Lady of Slaughter, the feline defender of the innocent, the avenger of the wrong, and the goddess of justice, Nefertiti said. She doesn't need some earthly plant to manifest her powers. She took a couple of steps back and narrowed her eyes. Patches of gray-black fur began to appear on her arms and legs, and her eyes changed from gray to a sickly yellow. She began making small jerking movements and crouched down as her dress tore and fell to the ground, replaced by silky black fur sprouting all over her body. Her face transformed, a ridged brow protruding from her forehead as it slowly covered itself in glossy fur, and her ears were lengthened and sharpened. Her jaw stretched and her nose shrank and turned pink. The new glistening fangs protruded from her mouth. At the end of each limb, nails became long, jagged claws, and once taut muscles became bulged and sinewy. Behind her, a massive black tail sprouted. It began to whip back and forth in anticipation. The transformed Nefertiti stood on two legs and peered at T'Challa with hooded eyes. A full-fledged human panther, she whipped her wild crown of hair behind her and attempted to smile, but the fangs made it look more like a snarl than a greeting. So as you see, Bast's daughter has actual superpowers, not just the powers that her ancestors gave her. And the question is, who does Wakanda belong to? The child of Bast or the avatars of Bast? And that's one of the great stories you can see in Black Panther Tales of Wakanda. my fellow writers here also all had fabulous stories. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. And Kim, thank you so much for the introduction.
Oh, Jesse, introducing you is like introducing, I don't know, the head honcho. I give it to you. And I wanted to say that we're going to continue. Look, we're going to go back and we're going to continue to talk. And if anyone wants to leave comments on the whole issue of freedom, because in the writing that comes up, even in the stories, do we have greater freedom in Wakanda? Is this the Wakanda world? Is this how we envision? Is this a way we envision life as people of African descent? Is this our type of utopia? And I think that is something I'd like to ask all of you. Thank you, Jesse. Like as I said, you're the man. Well, our next contributor is Kyoko M. She is a USA Today bestselling author and the author of the Black Parade urban fantasy series and of Cinder and Bones science fiction series. Now, Kyoko, in your story, Ukumbamba, did I pronounce it right?
I believe it's Ukubamba. That's what I've been saying, but I'm waiting to get another angry comment telling me I've been pronouncing it wrong.
I like your pronouncing it. Yeah, Ukubamba. You deal with a kidnapped child, and of course that is a very serious issue, and it's a part of the world we're living in right now, and that goes to the very nature of freedom when it has been taken away. And so, in your creating of this story, what brought it about, and creating a story like that in Wakanda, what I thought was interesting, because we do have this picture of Wakanda that is a utopian, and yet in that world you created a place where people are jailed for offenses and basically have to adhere to a structure that people like Okoye and make sure that it is done. So can you speak to the importance of freedom as it pertains to Wakanda? And if you could also read a short piece to help us understand the very real issue of children being kidnapped. And you did an excellent job of really, I love the character that you created and the sheer beauty and innocence of this child that is going through something that we would not want to happen to anyone. And I read it kind of like, oh my God. But it was very real. It was very, very real. So tell us about your process and why you chose this subject matter.
So a lot of it came from the idea that I wanted to make a story that fit within the word count. And so to me, I tend to write very long novels. I don't write a lot of short stories. And I thought that the structure of a typical kidnapping story is usually one where you can get a good idea of the characters, the situation, the stakes, without belaboring the point. And it's also something that's very personal to everyone, whether you have children or not. Everybody knows somebody that's very precious to them, and having them taken, even in a beautiful, vibrant, interesting world like Wakanda, it can still happen. But like you said, we think of Wakanda as a utopia, but it actually isn't. It has just as many problems as another city, but it just doesn't have that particular set of problems that come from being colonized. And so I thought that was interesting to bring up as well, because it's this wonderful mecca for us, if it were real, it doesn't mean it's without problems. And there would certainly be people who would want to take advantage of all the technology and, like I said, the lack of certain kinds of tensions that are present here in America that would not be present in Wakanda. So there would still be people trying to take advantage, do crimes, get money, all that good stuff. So, and like I said, I think because I live in Atlanta, which is a city that at this point is still unfortunately suffering from child trafficking and human trafficking as well. It was something I thought that I would like to shine a light on as well, from this particular perspective, especially it being a sweet little girl. So Would you like me to go ahead and do a short reading?
I would like you, and you created the character of the little girl so beautifully that no matter whether it was a short story or not, we cared about her. Mm-hmm. We cared about what happened, and it, as you said, it brought a subject matter that we are dealing with in the world we live in right now. So if you could read a little bit about that, and we'll discuss it, that would be great.
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to bring up a little bit. So to give you a short lead in, the excerpt I'm going to read is one of the suspects that they believe, the little girl, her name is Nandi. She was kidnapped. And Okoye was brought this case by T'Challa, and T'Challa asked her to try and find the child before she's taken outside of Africa. And so she has found her number one suspect, and she goes to visit this person in jail to see if she can figure things out. So I'll just read a little bit from there, just probably not more than a page. To Okoye, Kamari was the very definition of scum. He had been born in Ethiopia, but had left it in his teenage years to go abroad. He tried his hand at petty crimes in New York City, which had earned him nothing but broken bones and a nasty scar that bisected his forehead, ending at his ruined left eye. The Americans had found his tendency to betray his buyers if someone offered more money traitorous and sent him packing. He barely escaped with his life. What he had brought home to East Africa were connections back to the States. He had coordinated with the local criminals to move illegal arms, stolen goods, and counterfeit money to the border and outside of Africa. It had taken months of investigating to secure any information that would allow charges to stick. What had finally done Kamari in had been his ego. Okoye had approached him in disguise to set up a deal, and he'd fallen for it thanks to his towering ego, for he knew little of the Dora Milaje aside from their reputation. It had filled her with spiteful satisfaction when she watched the authorities stuff him into the back of the car. Allegedly, he'd precipitated the transfer of at least 100 young girls outside of East Africa. Therefore, Okoye was not terribly eager to be in his presence once again. Heat pressed in on all sides as Okoye strode down the hallway to the isolated prison cells. Each one sat roughly 20 feet apart from one another and had wrought iron bars staggered so the inmates couldn't see each other. The stone floor hadn't been swept recently. Her sandals left impressions in it as she walked towards Kamari's cell. The other inmates whooped and hollered at her appearance, making lewd suggestions or shouting insults as they recognized her uniform. And Okoye simply smiled. She put a lot of these men here personally. It was one of her greatest accomplishments as a warrior. Finally, she reached Kamari's cell. He was a short man, around 5'6", and spindly like an underfed spider. His right arm had a cast from the elbow to his thumb, caked with dirt and lint from his prison uniform. He had a scraggly beard and unkempt hair. His brown eyes were lifeless and beady. He had 2 gold front teeth, not as a show of wealth, but rather that he'd gotten the original teeth knocked out by a New York mobster the same night he acquired the scar. She remembered he'd bragged to her that it had been none other than Wilson Fisk, the kingpin, but she knew better. Kingpin didn't knock out front teeth. He caved men's skulls in with a single blow. But the story sounded good to other low-life criminals, so he stuck with the lie to increase his reputation. How ironic, Kamari said, tilting his head up from the pillow as he spotted her. My only visitor is the one who put me in here. Okoye offered him a thin smile. You should be grateful. Any visitors other than me would only visit with the intent to end your life. Kamari flashed her his gold teeth. You're not here to kill me. Lucky me. For once, you're more useful to me alive than dead, she said, rolling her eyes. I need information. Okay, so that's where I am. Oh, Kim, you're still muted.
Thank you for saying that. I wanted to thank you for that, because what you wrote about is something we have to continually keep in. Just keep our awareness. I know many people on this here are parents, and this is something we just cannot even see. And I love how you wrote about Okoye. She was like, what a badass. I mean, it was like, where do they get women like that? You know, it's just amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, I joked about the fact that one of the reasons I chose her is that, again, I fortunately have grown up around a lot of really powerful, smart, sympathetic Black women. So it was like complete second nature to me to choose to write about her.
Excellent, excellent. But before we go further, I would like Jesse to just say, I always think this is important. You to give what my mother says, give Caesar what is due. We do need to say that this would not have happened without Chadwick Boseman, and I would love it if Jesse could just take a moment and just speak about the connection that he had that caused him to write about to put this together, Black Panther Tales of Wakanda. If you wouldn't mind, Jesse.
Oh no, I don't mind at all, because a lot of what we did with this book came because and around the Black Panther movie, which of course had Chadwick Boseman starring as T'Challa. And we were in the middle of working on this book when Chadwick Boseman unfortunately died. So we as a group, we got together and we decided that this book would be dedicated to Chadwick Boseman's memory, because without his towering presence, I mean, there are some casting decisions that are easy. And having Chadwick Boseman as the Black Panther, I mean, he embodied the spirit of T'Challa. And I have to say, anytime I read this book, it's Chadwick Boseman's face I'm seeing when I see T'Challa. And that's how powerful his connection is to this character. So we were honored to be able to dedicate this entire work to Chadwick Boseman's memory. And as I say in the introduction, he is our forever king. And for an entire generation, Chadwick Boseman will always be the Black Panther. The character will go on, but in our minds, it will always be Chadwick Boseman. And it's his face that we'll see when we think about the glory and honor of Wakanda.
That is so beautiful, and it's true. And we all consider ourselves very lucky to be taking part in this, because we know that it shines a light on, as we've talked before, Black self-determination. It shines a light on freedom. It shines a light on voices that have not necessarily always been heard in the comic book industry. And so to have these voices, to have these wonderful people speaking, it's an honor. Our next speaker is Dr. And thank you, once again, thank you, Jesse. Our next speaker is Dr. Glenn Paris, and he's a resident of Atlanta, Georgia. And I need to say also, Kyoko is also from Georgia. And Dr. Paris is the author of Dragon's Air. It's soon to be published by Outland Entertainment. Now, Glenn wrote a very fascinating piece, and I'd also like him to talk about how, with the realization that some of the topic that he has in his piece is actually a topic that will probably be further explored by Marvel in the future. Glenn's piece is called The Underside of Darkness, and it's a fascinating story of power where, once again, the issues of freedom and conquest come up. Glenn, you write about the lost continent of Atlantis. Can you read one or two short sections, and we'll talk about that to give us an idea of this whole nature of power with regard to your story and with regard to Black Panther also?
Glenn, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Gotcha. I just realized what the sign language was. I'm sure I'm one of the older members of the group who doesn't remember to unmute himself. But I've of course been reading comic books since the 1960s, and in higher education, I did spend some time with African and African American history, and learning about the arc of the Ghanaian Empire, Songhai, Mali, and Weni Maputo, and so many of the other kingdoms that had arced, peaked, and fallen, before the rise of Europe, making them vulnerable to slavery and a lot of the abductions that occurred in the 1700s, 1800s, and beyond. And I often wondered what it would be like if those empires were not interrupted, if they continued on the arc that they had. You know, going back to ancient Egypt, the Library at Alexandria, the University at Timbuktu. You know, these were centers of excellence that people came from all over the world to educate themselves at. That's what Wakanda is, and I think I'd be remiss if I didn't address the loss that we had with the interruption of slavery to our culture and our rise as a people. So I wanted to look at the geopolitics of a superpower that had to maintain a balance with the other superpower that's comparable, that being Atlantis, and how you have to also keep both powers secret from the rest of the world. I mean, I think that would be quite a trick. I look at what the United States and Russia and China and France and Germany, and England all have to do to maintain their power and the balance over all these centuries. What must Wakanda have had to do, and at the same time remain secret and keep the world at peace or relative peace? So that's how I approached my story. I don't know if Marvel's going to go with this. They're really good at misdirection and lost leaders. But the word on the street is that the antagonist of the next Black Panther movie, Wakanda Forever, is going to be Atlantis and Namor the Submariner, which is what my story is about. So we'll see. We'll see. They can always change, and you know they often do that. But we'll see what happens there. But if you would like, I can read a little bit from my story. Let's see here. Only Wakandan kings were privileged to ride the sacred striped horse. It was said that the gods allowed no other men to bridle the zebra, so that mortal men should never forget. The celestial orishas shaped the whole continent to resemble the zebra's head. It was a point of consternation among recent Wakandan kings that zebras were stolen from the motherland and placed in captivity. He's speaking to his lover and says, "Our war dogs report progress in the New World and Europe." T'Challa stared off into the near distance as he spoke. But the beacon of freedom, once called Moses, approached her life's end. So this is the source of your troubles, Asalato concluded. The decision to see the new world with our diaspora was a painful one for all. Only the royal families knew that slavery served as our wedge. Guided by Wakandan war dogs, they secretly leveraged the direction of Western civilization, prevented consolidation of power and the ultimate destruction of civilization. We contained the Mongols from extending their reign across Eurasia. We'll steer these new Americans too. They're the sleeping giant we have to watch in the decades to come. But the suffering, T'Challa hesitated in his response. That we did not expect. Slavery was never like this abomination they created. Even the Mongols used slaves to the top of their abilities, treated them like people. Americans, they may actually progress beyond colony to a coalition of equals, both foreign and domestic eventually. Adobele, your troops appear fit for battle, T'Challa called, suppressing a smile. You offend me, my prince, she said, matching his expression. Your Dora Milaje are ever ready. We have a mission, Adobele, a mission every Wakandan king has dreaded. The general of the Dora Milaje knew no fear, yet there was only one danger to spark dread in the heart of a Wakandan protector. Atlantis? Possibly, T'Challa whispered. Adobele's voice became a rasp. But the treaty, not the Atlanteans. He shook his head. The French. The French, my prince? Seriously? Adobe laughed a breath of relief. Tequila sobered her with a glare. Does it appear to you that I jest, General? Forgive me, my prince. Adobe bowed deeply in contrition. You spoke of the French. The French and the German are actually playing with the atom. This Madame Curie and this young German clerk, they have no concept of what consequences may come from their folly. Our war dogs are aware of these efforts, my prince. I'm told that they will either stop or at least delay nuclear fission for 100 years. With luck, we'll be able to introduce safe, renewable energy options that will induce them to abandon this foolish research altogether. You should not worry about such things. That's it. So 100 years ago, they were still worried about the West developing nuclear weapons, and they worked very hard to prevent it. And I would think that that's the kind of thing that a noble empire that is looking at not conquest, but stability and peace might do. Maybe that moral high ground, could have been maintained, and again, not perfect, but something to help move the needle away from some of the near disasters we've experienced over the last 100 years. You're muted, Kim.
I see your point, but on the other hand, I think once again we see these power structures, and in that way, I thought your short story was very interesting. That we're still dealing when people in power decide that they know best for others. This was a part of the Wakanda that you created, and it's a part of the world we live in right now. That once people have power, they decide they know what's best for everyone around them.
And it's very difficult to control.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to control the decisions of others.
It is.
You can nudge them, but you can't make them do things. And we find that we keep circling back to the same bad decisions over and over again. I think it's human nature.
Yeah, the idea that some people saw slavery as a necessary part of the world we live in. And some people to this day still see that. Different forms of slavery, whether it's paying people low wages, or whether it is deciding that you will find structures so that we might have like a Jeff Bezos who decides that that I can have tons of millions, but regular workers, they don't really need that much money. So we're still living in a world where people make decisions based on their own self-interest. And so we have to ask that question, We
have fewer and fewer controls over our lives, over our bodies. People are trying to control what we do with our bodies, control the decisions that we make, control the inventions and creations that we make. And it's gotten better. There was a time when we had absolutely no license or agency over what we do. It's gotten better, but it's nowhere near what it ought to be.
Well, and I'm looking forward to seeing what other stories will be written about Black Panther. I thought what Jesse did by putting this anthology together is give us so many pictures and windows to look at with regard to Wakanda. And I'm looking forward. I'm hoping that this continues because it to me, it expands our pictures of Blackness. It also expands how we see our universe. A lot of what Wakanda is, to me, we as African Americans have taken the notion, the thoughts, the feelings connected with it, and we've created our own forms of Wakanda, which is quite beautiful. And I just see Linda smiling. I want to thank you very much, Glenn. I want to get over to our last speaker, Linda. And Linda, you are as what I consider a 1 in a million because you don't mind going to the dark in your writing. And to me, it is fascinating that in your story, shadow dreams, you take that other world, you take worlds and you create other worlds. And so I want to tell you all about Linda. She's an award-winning author of 5 collections, including How to Recognize a Demon Has Become Your Friends. I love that title. Has become your friend. And she's the first African American recipient of the Horror Writers Association Bram Stoker Award. Linda, I bow to you. That is amazing. So I would love you to talk about and read something from Shadow Dreams, because I love how you played with different dimensions. And you've created a fascinating piece. And the reason why I say that is I've been looking at that whole idea that as African Americans in slavery in any time period, just to have, as W.E. Du Bois talks about double consciousness, we've had to live in these different dimensions, the dimensions of Blackness, but also the dimension of white society, where white supremacy is so strong. And so I find it very fascinating that you created this character who actually goes through a dimensional change. So can you talk about that as well as read something from Shadow Dreams?
Sure.
Great.
Ooh, I hear an echo. Like what? What's happening? Okay. It's gone. So not that more of me isn't better, but not at the same time. So I actually have been so fascinated with quantum physics like forever. When I was in college, I went to physics and then I changed and got a BS in math because we need a PhD to do research and I just couldn't go to school anymore. So anyway, I have been, of the last few years, really fascinated with the idea of infinite realities, multiple realities, the idea that in this reality, the America that we live in is this way. But in some of the stories, as Glenn has mentioned, what if there is infinite realities, a reality where that didn't happen, as Jesse said, where the interruption, the change in how Stephen Barnes wrote about this in science fiction, where Africa wasn't changed as it was. It was able to actually become a major thing in our time. So I'm really fascinated with the idea that at any moment, what would those other moments and other realities look like, depending on how things change, how decisions were made, everything that's involved in that. My story itself is very, very, very personal. I really was really curious about what it would be like to be a 14-year-old living in a village in Wakanda, coming into the Golden City to be trained as a Dora Milaje. It was just a major thing for me. And anyone who knows me knows that's not really a stretch. I'm really kind of liking that concept, Dora, of a warrior woman. I mean, I'm not able to fight that way, but if I could, I would. So, and then, yes, there's darkness. That's why it's called Shadow Dreams. And there's also hope. There's also a discovery. This young girl, Dira, comes in with her own, personal wounds from loss and wanting so desperately to do everything she could for Wakanda, for her village, for her parents, and how to balance that. I think that's a very real struggle. So if you want, I can go ahead and read a little bit of it. And I will, because I got the mic. So I'm going to go forward in the story. It starts off with Dira arriving at the Golden City and being met by one of the other students. She came late because of a loss of her grandmother, which was a huge thing for her to deal with. And now she's at the training center and meeting with the other students, but really in interaction with the teacher for the first time. So let me just find the place to begin. I also love the idea of all the weaponry and all the stuff that they had to learn. I did a lot of research on that. I could probably write a whole book about what I had to do for that research. It was fun. So the teacher tapped Dira's blade. So you are the new arrival. Yes, I can barely hear you. The teacher leaned down. Did you actually speak? Yes, Dira said louder. Several of the others sitting on the ground tapped each other's blades in support. The teacher walked around Dira, taking her in. What is your name? Shadira, but I am called Dira. And where are you from, Dira? Dira opened her mouth to say the name of her village, but instead said, Wakanda. Good, you have learned your first lesson. She nodded to Yuto, who sat on the floor with the others. Yuto's the person who picked her up from the train station. Let's see you disarm me. The teacher grabbed Dira's blade wrist, applied a nerve lock, and swept down with her own blade, stopping within an inch of Dira's neck. When Dira didn't move, she released her, causing Dira to stumble back and fall to the floor. I wasn't. Dira stopped talking, realizing what just happened. The teacher leaned down, grabbed Dira's hand, and pulled her to her feet. You weren't ready. The Dora Milaje are always ready, Dira said. Yes, even in our sleep. The teacher pointed to one of the seated trainees with her blade. With every inhale and exhale, the student said, ready to defend, ready to die for the king, for Wakanda. The other trainees tapped their blades and shouted, for Wakanda. You aren't Dora Milaje yet. That's why you're here, the teacher said. So I'm going to skip forward to, she does an example of, Dira does an example of the knife form, which doesn't work out the way she wanted it to, because she did it as a, anyway, you read the story, you get it. So at the end of that scene, all of the students leave, and Dira waited for the other trainees to leave. Somehow she lost sight of Yuto. The teacher came up to her. Those are lovely clothes, but you need to change into trainee clothes. Did you go to the dorms before coming in here? No, teacher. Dira walked with her to the exit. My name is Okoye. Come, I'll show you. Thank you, Teacher Okoye. Okoye pulled Dira's bag out of the shelf, handed it to her, and smiled. Just Okoye will do. Thank you, Okoye. Dira put the short blade back on the shelf, but Okoye returned it to her. Let this be your first weapon. She took a leather sword belt from the top of the shelf, gave it to Dira, who tied it on her waist and put the blade in. Okoye crossed her arms and smiled. Yes, that's better. So as I said, the story has a lot of sort of twists and turns as Dira goes to accomplish what is the most important goal in her life and the support around her. What I really loved, again, was this idea of the teachers, their commitment, Okoye, and the whole setup for the Dora Milaje to really discover their inner strength. And for the cause of the nation. So I was very drawn to that, and the multiple realities. I'm not going to talk about that. You need to read the story. I'm just saying.
Thank you, Jesse. And
I love him.
I love this. And you can find it on Amazon. You can find it in your local bookstores. You can find it by just going into online. You have a bookstore in your community, go online. This book is everywhere. And if you can't, you can call us up, So we'll email us. We'll find the book for you. You can't find it. But what I wanted to talk about is, the whole notion of freedom. What is Wakanda to you? I think almost all of you, most of the people in some way dwelt on the Dora Milaje and also Okoye. So I'm curious, do all of you see with the character of Okoye a sense of this woman would be free whether she was a slave or not? That there is something in her spirit that doesn't allow her to be in any way under anyone. She's a powerful woman, and she's represented. Anyone can speak about this issue.
Well, I just want to add in real quick and say that what Koyoko said is true. I mean, if you grow up in America, there are very few of us in the Black community who cannot speak to some woman in the family who represented the strength, the balance, the center, the heart, and the heart with strength. Like yeah, not even playing around. If they didn't know how to hit, they did learn how to hit. So I think in general, that was not something that was hard to find. But in our culture, the way women and Black women are treated on this planet in many countries, it's not so cool. But in our families, we all got it.
Good point. Good point. A woman, we all know we have an aunt or a cousin or even a sister who walks around mild mannered, but let anyone mess with her family. Oh my God. It's like, okay.
Let this in here. I know in the Black Panther mythology that T'Challa was married to Storm from the X-Men, and in the movie, he is him and Nakia. But for me, Okoye is the feminine version of T'Challa. She is the hero of Wakanda. And remember the old story about Grace Kelly and Fred Astaire, that Grace Kelly could do everything Fred Astaire could do, but backwards and in heels? Okoye does everything T'Challa can do without the heart-shaped herb and without Beth's blessing. She's doing it by her own inner strength training. So to me, Okoye, really, if you want to talk about the next Black Panther, I think she might be a good choice to be the next Black Panther, because she is the strongest women without powers in the entire Marvel universe. So I think a lot of us sleep on Okoye a little bit, that we see her as just Adora. But I think Okoye is one of the strongest women in fiction, period.
Yes.
In my story, it takes place 100 years earlier, but it echoes a lot of the Black Panther that we know. And in my story, the general of the Dora Milaje is Adobale. And much like Okoye, she is respectful but equal to the Black Panther. And she runs her Dora Milaje very much like Okoye does in our time. So this is a heritage for strong women in Wakanda. And like most of us on this panel, I grew up with very strong women, from my grandmother to my aunts to my sisters to my mother, all the other doctors and professors that I worked with. At least half of them were women, and many of them in my later years were women of color. And I couldn't be who I was without them.
Yeah, that was my first thought when we reached the portion of Black Panther after they thought that T'Challa was gone, and I was like, Okoye was my first choice. I was like, she's got this. She could absolutely run things in his absence. I thought that she was like the natural choice, and I'm very excited that there are rumors going around that when we get the Wakanda series, like the mini series, that she's going to be in it. I think that's going to be really wonderful.
Excellent point. We still have one thing we haven't discussed. I want to know, from reading all of your writings, and we can all just talk just openly about this without one person just chime in. What does Wakanda mean to you? Does Wakanda mean something different to you than perhaps it might mean to the general public? Or does a character that you identify with, does that speak to you as Wakanda? Like for some of us, Okoye might be that character just as much as T'Challa. So what is it? What is it about Wakanda that struck you? And I've heard your stories, Glenn, of when you first actually read Black Panther. But what is it? What does it give you? What kind of feeling?
The need to not have to code switch, which is something that we've done for 400 years since we've been taken. In order to save family, in order to save our own lives, a lot of times we have to code switch and act ignorant and joke and play the buffoon, when we completely understand what's going on, more so than those who are directing us. And we're now getting to the point where we can say these things openly, and we don't have to sort of dumb ourselves down. We don't have to degrade ourselves. We don't have to act like it's all a joke. We can show that we very proudly, very confidently go forward with brilliant ideas, brilliant inventions, understanding a situation, saying, like President Obama, saying, 10 steps ahead of everybody and only pretending to be 2 steps ahead of everybody. I mean, these are the kinds of things that we can do in a Wakanda mindset.
And I think of
thank you, Glenn.
Yeah, love Glenn. I think of I had a thought. I don't like to make blanket statements, but I'm going to say that my feeling is that being Black in America, you never are feeling, you're never in a position where you can just relax into being a human and free. You always have to think and be aware and almost have like this is me. Now I'm going to talk about me. Wherever I go, I feel like I have to have a force field around me ready for somebody to come in and try to mess with me. Because I've worked in corporate America in IT. I went into speculative horror science fiction when there were like a handful of Black people in there. Now there's so many you can't name them. I love that. And, where I would have to walk in a room with this force field, like ready for somebody to mess with me, or knowing that there were people there who didn't see me as human. 100%. And we still have that. Each little step we make is better, but we're not there yet. So when Wakanda, the movie, came out and showed a development of a Black society strong and way ahead of the rest of the world and everything else, I didn't really feel like, oh, now we are better than them. No, what it showed is that we are human and given circumstances can do magnificent things, which we have done, as Glenn has pointed out. There's things we've done in this society that we're not acknowledged for. I'm over the moon about the Juneteenth thing. And actually, HWA just put out a PSA where they had I don't know how many Black writers in HWA making a statement about it. There were not so many years ago when I was the few Black person in there, that PSA couldn't have been done. So things are changing, but there's still so many places where because of the ignorance and low self-esteem and all that built in whatever, that we have to, all of us, walk in the room and be ready for some crap.
Good point. What about you, Kyoko?
So for me personally, there were 2 things that really made an impact for Black Panther, just in general, but the movie in particular. One was I was that skinny, nerdy kid who had a book in her hand at all times and
I was
didn't have that
skinny
many. So was I. No, I'm just kidding. I had a book in my hand everywhere I went, and I was socially awkward, and I got tortured from day one until I left about being a dork and liking comic books, liking science fiction, liking fantasy. Because again, unfortunately, I grew up in a town where it's like, well, that's not what we do here. So, I got ostracized for it. And so to have a huge budget with a bunch of really talented actors and a wonderful script and a fantastic director was super liberating for me as a Black nerd, because it was just like, haha, this thing I've been telling you about forever is really cool. And it just showed you that it's really cool. And it was written well and it was acted well. And there weren't like a bunch of awful Tyler Perry stereotypes. No offense if you like Tyler Perry. I'm sorry. I'll sprinkle a little salt here. But and so that was really cool. Just like, look, there are people, we've been in science fiction this entire time, whether you want to cite Octavia Butler or all the other Black sci-fi writers, but we do like these things and it is cool. And it made me feel really included. The other thing is, like I said, I chose to write about Okoye personally, just because I related to her, because I think that she has this really amazing presence to her. And I found it so impressive that they did this great balance between her being this unflinching, unstoppable warrior. But at the same time, you saw her vulnerabilities. Like after she thought that T'Challa was gone and she felt that, her own agency of being devoted to the Dora was really, that's a great conflict. Sometimes you get movies where they, have this conflict and you're like, oh, whatever, that's not really a big deal. Nobody would act like that. The way that they portrayed her being loyal to the throne and then realizing over the course of the movie that no, I was actually loyal to T'Challa because of who he was, because of what he made Wakanda, because of what he made this environment. I can't just be loyal to the throne when you have a pretender sitting on it. And so that to me, I thought was really beautifully done. And adding to that, another thing that I think people should realize more often is that while we have Black actors in all kinds of different media, medium to dark-skinned Black actors, there's a difference. It's very uncomfortable to talk about, but there is a difference when you see the roles that lighter-skinned Black people are given and then the roles that medium to dark-skinned people are given. And this was a film where it was almost universally dark-skinned actors. And it was like, it just felt nice. It just, not that there's anything wrong with anything else, but it, to me, again, as a brown skinned bordering on dark skinned Black person, it was just like, especially with the Okoye, because she was portrayed as feminine, beautiful, powerful, all of those things. It wasn't one of those things where they pushed her to the side of being a tomboy or pushed her to a super feminine side. It was right in the middle. And I thought that was super well balanced as well. And so you put all that together, and that's really, I think, what I kind of came away with between Black Panther in general, but also the film.
I love what you had to say. Thank you. You said it. Oh, Jesse, what about you? Because you already had written about Black Panther. So what was it about Black Panther that captured you? And then the idea of Wakanda. Did you see it as something that was even I've talked to some people who see it as a possibility of something that's a form of reality, that we can create something that a space of freedom. It almost reminded me of, I don't know if you've ever heard of Quilombos, where Black people during slavery had a safe space where they could live. And somehow Wakanda seemed almost like a safe space where Blackness is something to be proud of. Yeah.
For me, the real attraction to Wakanda is Black. Not only is Wakanda Black, it's blackety black. So it celebrates its Blackness. It shows off its Blackness. It revels in its Blackness. I mean, as creatives, Black creatives here in America, we know that sometimes to make our stuff mainstream, to make white Americans read it, we have to pull back the Blackness a little bit sometimes. We have to introduce non-Black characters. When you see some of this stuff on television and you know it's written by someone Black, you can usually pick out the point where they had to change something to make it appealing to a white producer or a white network director. And we still hear stories about this to this day, about how we have to sort of pull back ourselves to make others comfortable. But with Wakanda, we don't do that. With Wakanda, we say, this is what Wakanda is. And, you know, maybe we'll give Martin Freeman a small role in the movie. We give him a little something to do. But it's going to be Chadwick Boseman. It's going to be Angela Bassett. It's going to be Forrest Whitaker. They're going to lead the movie. It's going to be Michael B. Jordan. They're going to lead the movies. So for me, Wakanda means we don't have to hide our brilliance. We don't have to hide our creativity. We don't have to hide who we are, because who we are is beautiful and powerful and strong. That's why we want Wakanda to come into reality. I mean, and that's one of the things that I'm also really happy that we have Juneteenth as a federal holiday now, because it means the government and schools and businesses from now on every year have to recognize that slavery did happen. It's not a theory. They're going, when they have their next year, when we have their Juneteenth sale and they're trying to sell you a car, remind them that what we're doing today is not a celebration. It is a recognition of what this country did to us.
And it took them 2 months to let us know.
The fact that we found out something that they didn't want us to know in Texas, which was slavery was over. So
2 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I really hope that we don't lose the meaning of Juneteenth in the future, because the meaning of Juneteenth is not, it was the day that slavery ended. It was the day we as African Americans found out that slavery had ended, that we began to have our own agency in Texas, that we began to recognize how beautiful and powerful we are. And for a lot of us, that's what Wakanda is about. It's about celebrating our blackity blackness and showing the world how proud we are of who we are and what we can do.
Love that. I love that. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And I like the fact that you as a group are not afraid to touch on these. Sometimes when it comes to, there's so many taboos around Blackness, and no one admits to it. They just say, they just kind of skip over it, you know?
Yeah,
and
Wakanda makes you brave.
Yeah, okay. So this is Wakanda braveness. Okay.
One of the interesting things, if I may say so, I read all 18 short stories in that book, and each one was a little different. None of us collaborated on the stories that we wrote. And what it showed was that there are differences of opinions. There are different takes on the same issues, but they're all informed by the baggage that we bring from our unique experiences as African Americans, and it is projected through the lenses of our own experiences in our own communities. And Jesse grew up in Mississippi. I grew up in New York. Kyoko grew up somewhere else. Linda's in Arizona, which is its own experience, I'm sure. But we have the same kinds of opinions, experiences, and solutions that everybody else does. When you get a group of people who are well educated and intelligent, you sit them in the room. Everybody's got an opinion and an approach to solving a problem. So do we, and it's not the same. It's not monolithic.
Yeah. Good point. We are probably at our kind of the ending. So what I'd like you each to go around and just tell me what you're doing next. And if you feel like it, if you were going to write another story on Wakanda or Black Panther, what would it be? If you were going to do something, what would you change? Is there another character you would dwell on? Would you take, as there were so many people were saying, why did Wakanda have to go out of Africa at times? Would you keep it there? What would you do? Let's start with Kyoko.
I think if I got another shot, I'd like to do Shuri. It's mostly because I came in later from when everything was being organized. And so Jesse had told me, oh, okay, well, here's some of the stories we already have. So here's the parameters for who you could choose. So if I got to start from scratch and I could pick anyone, I think I'd like to go for Shuri, just because I think in terms of personality, there's a lot I would like to explore with her. I think she's a lot of fun. And I think it's very natural that she's a lot of people's favorite character based on her movie portrayal. But she was also my other pick for, after unfortunately Chadwick passed away, and they were discussing what they wanted to do with the future of the movies. And I really think that Shuri is the way to go, because I think that it could open up a lot of really great avenues. And one thing I've enjoyed about this current phase that Marvel is in is that they're introducing more and more Black women specifically into the continuity. So between Valkyrie and the girl from WandaVision, I just forgot her name. I don't know why. Photon. I don't know why I just forgot her name.
Monica Rambeau.
Monica, there you go. I don't know why I keep trying to call her something else. I think I keep calling her Maria because that's her mom's name. Her, and then you have the Glenn. You're still muted.
You're muted, Glenn. So we didn't hear anything.
I said her name is Tioka Paris. How can you forget that? Her name is Paris.
I have no idea why my brain just like blanked there. I think it's been a long day. Anyway, but what I was saying is that we'll wrap it up. I really enjoyed seeing that there are more Black women. Like we've got the 2 actresses on who are now on Loki, which was a specific thrill for me since I'm infatuated with Tom Hiddleston. Like I said, if I had a choice, it would be Shuri. I really think I would go running with that. So that's what I say.
Okay. We're going to go back to you with regard to what your next projects are, because I want people. I realize we have a little bit more time, so I want people to really, be honest. Well, what do you feel like with Linda? What would you do differently? What character would you even put it in this universe? You're into different dimensions. Maybe you would take it to Mars. I don't know.
You need to stop with your mind. I wouldn't change this story, but like the next few stories, I would like this could continue the next story, the Black Panther and a bunch of people come in having a conversation about how this ends and what they're going to do. And then I was thinking how cool it would be if she found out, our main, Dira, that she could do some stuff with multiple realities. Ooh, that would be fun.
Oh my God. Yes. Yes.
And look at alternate versions of Wakanda and the US and all the other powers. If she could like slip and slide and move and ooh, yeah. That might be a 10-book thing. I'm just saying.
She could be a whole superhero on her own. What you're just talking about.
Don't even get started. I literally have 15 books I want to write. If I start thinking about one thing like this, that could be 10 by itself.
It's funny.
I was thinking about the multiverse after Linda started talking about it. What if the brothers were exchanged? What if Michael B. Jordan's father actually had become the Black Panther, and T'Chaka was sent to Oakland to raise some ruckus or as a war dog? Michael B. Jordan would then be the Black Panther, and then Chadwick Boseman would have been the challenger. That would be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say that actually. Think of the DC universe. So with Calabac and Orion, that's what they did. They switched kids in like this weird peace treaty thing, and the results were really, really interesting. I think that would have been a lot of fun to do a kind of like alternate, which I'm hoping, because the What If series is on its way. I don't remember if that's this year or not, but I know one of them is, I think that they switched. Did they switch T'Challa and Tony?
No, they switched T'Challa and Star-Lord.
Star-Lord, that's what it was. I mean, they switched it with somebody, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds really cool."
T'Challa becomes part of the Guardians of the Galaxy.
There you go. So I
can't wait
really
for
love
What If
yeah.
just for that one episode. And also, for all of us Chadwick Boseman fans, with that What If episode is Chadwick Boseman's last appearance as T'Challa, because he voices T'Challa for that What If episode. So it's coming out later this year. So don't miss that episode of What If for Chadwick Boseman's last appearance. But Kim, when you're talking about all of these stories, let's just say, I really hope Ryan Coogler and the What If crew and the Marvel Wakanda television series crew are watching this, because you're hearing a lot of these great ideas that they should come to us and say, hey, what do you have next? So one of the ideas I want to point out, I would love to play with, is that what if Wakanda was like the Marvel Universe America? Now, keep in mind, the only Wakandan hero we know is the Black Panther. But what if they had their own Spider-Man? What if they had their own Captain America? Bass empowers T'Challa. What if they have their own Tony Stark that uses that Wakandan technology to come up with his own Iron Man suit, the Vibranium Man? There's so many ways we can tell these great stories around Wakanda. And how would T'Challa react if somebody else out there is representing Wakanda besides him through his own intelligence and not through Bass? So there are so many these great stories you can tell. Wakanda has such possibility. And I think all these story ideas, if you hear me, Marvel, for volume 2 of Tales of Wakanda, I think you're already hearing what we can do.
If it makes a difference, and this is again random happenstance. So my father went to high school with Joff Thorne. I don't know if any of you recognize his name, but he's the guy who's currently doing the Black Panther animated series. And so I know him personally because he's like my part-time mentor. And I actually did speak to him after I got at the end, after the anthology came out. And he's like, "Oh yeah, it's on my reading list." And I was like, "All right, well, at least we're in." I don't know when we're in, but we're in. Yeah.
And
give us a meeting. I mean, we need to have a meeting.
Right. In Kyoto, you know how to do these, you're writing yourself, your own personal writing. You know how to do these continuations things so well. I'm ready to take a class from you because, I can't stop it. My imagination.
So yeah, that helps. We're on their radar. I just don't know where we are in the queue, but I will certainly connect you, Jesse, if you want to speak to him personally.
Hey, I think it's great because honestly, this is my opinion. What you did, Jesse, with Black Panther Tales of Wakanda, is actually to me like a series, and it's a series that like each week they would dwell on. And what great thing, there's 18 episodes, there's 18 stories, so there's 18 episodes. And so each week they would be dwelling on a different phase, a different story. And I think it would be exciting. And it would actually move the whole Wakanda. It would have a bigger, because I do think this picture is bigger. When we first started out with Wakanda, right, we had Stan Lee doing it, and Glenn, you speak about how there was this, was it $1 billion a chair that you saw in the 1968 book? Was it that?
Yeah. When the Fantastic Four came to visit Wakanda in that first or the second comic book in that series, I think it was Reed Richards or Human Torch sat down on this bench, and T'Challa said, "You're sitting on a $20 million bench." And my jaw dropped. I mean, I was just a kid at the time. I was like 8 years old. And I was like, $20 million bench? This brother's got a $20 million bench and he lets people sit on it? Says, what must he be worth? And it was just, this unheard of thing. Nobody was that rich back then. No black person was rich like that back then. I couldn't stop reading it at that point. I think everybody's muted. But if time travel were not a factor, I'd love to see a young Sidney Poitier take a swing at playing the Black Panther.
And I will also say that I'm glad it didn't happen, because when they would have done it, it would not have been as good as Ryan Coogler's. But Wesley Snipes was originally supposed to be T'Challa in the first Black Panther movie back in the 90s. I still say a young Wesley Snipes would be a great T'Challa.
That's an interesting choice, because I guess in my brain, I'm so used to him either being a bad guy or being Blade. I'm just like, wow, would he have been like warm enough to be T'Challa? Actually, I think because I'm a 90s kid. My thought was always Will Smith. Personally, just because of that poise, and he's always given off like that commanding presence and things like that. So Wesley would have been very, very interesting.
I just see Will as being too tall, and I have to say I also see Wesley's might being a little bit too short, just a little bit too short. But Wesley has the moves.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, definitely.
But he was perfect as Blade, by the way. Let's just be clear.
Yep.
I was going to say that's a big Blade, shadow cast when they're going to have.
Blade movie was perfect. Mm-hmm. The other two, but that first one.
Linda, who's your pick?
My pick, I don't know, because Chadwick is the only reason I wrote this story. It's hard for me to see anybody else. I mean, when I got contacted about the possibility of this story, you all have heard this before, but I was still in the middle of chronic fatigue and everything after COVID last year, and I didn't really think I had the energy to even write the story. And before I could even say, I don't think I can have the energy to write the story, I'm watching a special on his life because he had passed and sitting there crying. And all of a sudden I got this chill and I was like, oh, Chadwick, what are you trying to tell me? And he's like, try it, do it. I was like, okay. So it's too much of a connection for me. I mean, I'm sure any of the people that you all had mentioned would have done it well in a different kind of way. I just can't see anything else. Of course, you know, I'm always calling Jesse my Black Panther now because, you know, for all the obvious reasons. But yeah, I can't think of anyone else because of the emotional connection I have.
And Linda, I mean, I 100% agree.
You know, go ahead.
No, I would just say I 100% agree with Linda because when I write Black Panther, I'm thinking of Chadwick Boseman. But I do hope that we as a audience and as fans of Wakanda will accept and give whoever they choose next to play Black Panther a chance. Because I would hate to see this wonderful mythology, this wonderful world, never explored again on television with the Black Panther because of the unfortunate death of Chadwick Boseman. I know for a whole generation, Chadwick Boseman is T'Challa. Just like for a whole generation, Christopher Reeves was Superman. And for a whole generation, Sean Connery was James Bond.
And Nichelle Nichols was Uhura. But if we want to see more of these stories, we're going to have to accept that the actors are mortal. Right. It's the character that's immortal. And we're going to have to accept that sometimes there's going to have to be a change. We would have loved to have seen 7 more movies with Chadwick Boseman. Yeah. But unfortunately, he passed away. And it's either we decide to retire this entire mythology on television or accept that they're going to have to change it so that the Black Panther as a character doesn't exist anymore, or we're going to have to accept that one day there's going to be somebody new playing T'Challa. And we're going to have to give that person a real chance to show what he can do.
I do think that, especially based on the examples that you gave, I think that we just need a mourning period. Yeah. That's unfortunate. That's the most accurate way I've described it, is that I think that after we've had some time to shed our tears and kind of calm down and just, you know, accept it, I think that people will be open to it, but it does need to be a few years. It was a powerful.
That's a good point.
Meant a lot. I think that people are definitely going to be receptive to it, but we just need time to adjust.
People are hungry for this to continue in many ways, even though the sadness is there. I know I am. And I feel like Black Panther Tales of Wakanda Anthology is part of helping people, because everyone I talk to, and you know, I talk about it everywhere. I started booking the hairdresser the other day. Stop it. So, you know, I'm always telling people, you want to have some more fun. And, you know, yes, Chadwick and all this happened, but buy the book. It's fun. You can still go in there and enjoy yourself. So I think that Chadwick was so wonderful at it is going to continue to want people to fulfill that hunger for that adventure and that vision of Wakanda and so forth.
I just hope that they're mindful when they recast it and don't do what they did back in the 60s with Bewitched and had Dick York and then Dick Sargent follow him up and didn't say a word about the change. You know, think about what you're doing is the only advice I would give them. So Kevin Feige, if you're listening, think about what you're doing. And I know you do, but
I think we're probably going to close out, but what I wanted us to close out, but by the way, you guys are geniuses. Every little comment you made, it was so important. But what I want us to close out is just to say 1 or 2 or 3 words about Juneteenth. You know, if you have a remembrance of celebrating it, anything that brings it to mind. I feel like we are in a historic period right now, and our being on and talking about this the day after to me is a real honor. And so, Jesse, as our fearless leader, do you want to start?
Well, okay, so surprisingly enough, I've never been to a Juneteenth celebration because as someone who grew up in the South, it was May 8th when the Union troops made it to Mississippi and told the slaves there that they were free. And living here in DC now, we celebrate Emancipation Day for the Emancipation Proclamation. So I've never actually been to a Juneteenth celebration, but I'm looking forward to seeing how the Juneteenth holiday is merged with Emancipation Day here in Washington, D.C., and May 8th in the South, especially in Mississippi, where we're all celebrating the same thing. We're celebrating them on different dates. So I'll be really interested to see how all of these different celebrations are merged into the one big Juneteenth celebration. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next year. And of course, being at programs like this, where we can celebrate our creativeness and Juneteenth at the same time.
Thank you, Jesse. What about you, Kyoko?
One thing I think is very fortunate timing and possibly planned out. So the day job that I work at a state school here in Georgia, and the president was just announced. The new president was just announced, I think yesterday, and it's a Black man. He has a background in science, in STEM, and particularly in diversity issues, which is a big deal with this particular university, given that it has a substantial population of people of color. And so that to me was a really wonderful timing just to have, I'm at Georgia State. I was trying not to say it in case somebody's hovering around, because that's my boring, like, Clark Kent identity. This is my Superman identity. But yes, it's Georgia State University. So they just announced the new president. He'll start in August. And so, like I said, I went and looked him up because I was like, I really hate the governor. Just gonna say it. He sucks. He sucks. He has terrible priorities. He's not as bad as Governor Kemp, but he sucks. And so I was like, well, who did they replace him with? And I looked him up and I was like, all right, there we go. This is how we get back on track. Because again, like I said, the school itself really embraced the protest after George Floyd was murdered. All of these different things that matter to Black people have been kind of center stage at Georgia State University. So it was a relief to see that they noticed what the priorities of their students, their faculty, their staff were to have chosen this incredibly qualified Black man, and especially since a lot of his work was in DC. Washington, D.C. And so I was like, oh, that's even more impressive. Does that mean he knows how to have grace under pressure? So that to coincide with Juneteenth, I think was really excellent, because I think that it's, even though I don't really plan to do this for the rest of my life, but it was a nice thing to see that the people who are coming through and being educated at this university will now have someone who's a little bit more, close to home and will understand the things that are important to them. And, kind of connecting that back to Juneteenth, that liberation and those sort of things, I think were, that's a nice thing, I think, for this week. So.
Thank you. You've been liberated. What about you, Glenn? Any Juneteenth remembrances or something that you feel is important about Juneteenth?
Just, thinking about, and Jesse brought up a great point that, a lot of the former slaves learned that, that the institution was terminated at different times, but to work for free for 2 months before being told, oh yeah, you're free, and not being offered a nickel for those 2 months worth of free work, or given any kind of compensation. I think it's an awful thing, and I think it's the kind of thing that should be remembered. When people start talking about reparations, you need to point out, there was, 300 years of free labor, and then it was another 100 years of cheap labor. You need to recognize.
Well, you might not feel that great about the fact that Delaware and Kentucky, two Union states, the slaves were not free there until December of that year. And then with the Choctaw Indians, they had Black slaves, and I believe in 1866 was when they were free, because life is not always fair.
No, it's not.
But hey, we are living in a time when we have freedom, thank God. Linda, what are your thoughts on Juneteenth?
Well, I think the most important thing about it now being a federal holiday, one, my son like messaged me this morning and was like, I just found out I have day off because it's Juneteenth. I was like, yes. Anyway, I think what it does is it brings awareness to the concept, to the idea of what the whole thing was with slavery. And I got to shout out to Samiko Salson, who just is the woman, the Black woman who put the video together for the HWA with all the Black writers making a statement. It's worth watching. It's a few minutes. But anyway, at the end of that, what's stated is what I have the biggest hope for, and that this is part of how we heal this race situation in America. That people, this is part of it, the recognition, the education of you can't deny something and heal it.
Yes. So true. For the United States to heal, what do they call it? It's a stain. It's a stain on this great nation. We can no longer deny it.
Make it better. It's already been tried. You know, this is why we have the horrible situations that we have every day being Black in America. But the way it can be healed is to have generations, younger generations now aware of this through this holiday, hopefully being educated about it. And that's how you can come to terms with mistakes made.
And of course, reparations. I'm sorry, I believe in reparations. Whether it's education, whether it's housing, there needs to be an acknowledgement of the pain that and what the Black race has gone through continually up until now. It's not just because slavery ended. There were still things, the Homestead Act, the denial of housing, just so much. You know, when I thank God when they actually showed what happened or talked about Tulsa, the massacre. Finally, it's been recognized by our government on a national level. So we're starting. I believe the healing is starting. What I wanted to, if anyone wants to quickly mention what they're doing next, and then we're just going to take it out. So, yes, show your books, Linda. Beautiful. Okay. Excellent.
First of all, I have a poem in the magazine of fantasy and science fiction dedicated to Octavia Butler. She was talking to me. I got a poem in Under Twin Suns just coming out. And it's a wild thing. It's a wild, weird ride. I'm just saying, it was kind of awesome.
I love it. I love it. Jesse, what are you doing next?
Well, of course, I have a couple of things that I can't announce yet, but I can tell you that I'm working on another anthology, this time surrounding African-American history, fantasy, and science fiction. I have a couple of other things in the hopper. I've got a couple of comic books out right now from DC Comics, Superman Red and Blue, issue number 3. Go out and check that out. And I'll have a couple of more announcements I hope I can make really soon.
Well, I've got my novel Dragon's Air has been picked up by Outland Entertainment, and I just got a word from the editor. They're working on the cover art and the back cover text. So I think they're going to make an announcement within the next maybe month or two, I guess. I'm not quite sure when they're actually going to release the book, but it's a really great feeling.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Kyoko?
So right now I'm working on book 5 in my current science fiction dragon hunting series. That'll be out next year. If I keep writing it so fast, maybe it'll be out this year. Because actually today I hit the halfway point. I was like, oh, I'm writing this faster than I thought. Anyway.
Kyoko, I want people to know how many.
Kyoko, she is amazing.
But tell them how many pages in your average book. I just want our audience to know that.
I was gonna say, so because I went to an event this weekend, that was the funny part. So I had one copy of everything I've gotten published right now, which is 9 books. And so I was putting it out. I was like, Oh, I've read a lot of books. I guess I didn't notice because that's the first time I've had them all in the same point because of COVID. So before I would have like half and half or something, and I had them all out. I was like, oh my God, I wrote a lot. But no, my average book is like on the high side of like 400 pages. So I talk quite a lot. I write a lot of books.
I think it's excellent. Well, I want to say thank you to Sassoon and Dedrin. We all, yeah, we love you. We are so appreciative of this opportunity, and just want to say to our audience, thank you all. And hey, look us up. We're on Facebook. We're out there, and we are wanting to hear from you also. Thank
Happy
you.
Juneteenth
Well,
and
when
happy
it-
Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the Black men who are raising children and
Yes.
honoring their strong Black women.
And I
Exactly.
I forgot to mention that I'm in a story bundle called Afrofuturism. Bunch of Black people writing future stuff. Come on, get with it.
Okay.
Hey, Dedrin.
Yes. Hi, Dedrin. Thank you.
No,
Oh, you muted yourself.
Muted.
I'm not hitting on mute. There you go. We'll learn this soon enough. So that's it. No, just again, I had to give the extended mix of this. This was just it was too good to turn off. We absolutely gonna have to do this again. You guys just set the bar extremely high, and again, just as a fan of all your work, obviously, and again, just for what this means to commemorate and kick off, this. I think just this really, I don't know the right way to say it. I think this is just like a very seminal point, in African American literature, just in creativity, the premise of Afrofuturism and shared futurism that, all of us are a part of. And so this, I think this book, your work is really going to be a nice watermark to that conversation points forward. So again, I'm honored by each and every one of you for being here. And to that, I'm going to build some points and links. I already was asked the best place to buy that book inside our virtual space. So just as an aside, I'll work on that tonight to do basically do a panelist shop. So that way we'll make sure to keep this as an open space where people can come back in and patronize not only the folks in our vending space there, but the people that you're seeing here on our streams today. So with that, thank you all so very much.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Let's see. So I'm going to just make this a little simple transition, I believe. And Lynn, there we go. So we have just heard from a fantastic panel again for everybody that is joining us again. My name is Edwin Sneed, and welcome to Subsume Summit and Creative Juneteenth. And this is our initial kickoff with Tales of Wakanda, and speaking with majority of the fantastic stories that you'll read as first part of a collection of original stories based on the legacy and the story world of the Black Panther. And so this is just the very beginning. And likewise, we shared that you're able to not only see this particular program, but also a world of vendors and a world of other projects and endeavors in our virtual space. So for those who have your tickets, you're able to go into our Subsume Summit virtual space and be able to vibe with people not only that are watching this stream live in concurrence, but also be able to talk with other participants. And you're able to vend and shop and vibe with each other. So with that, again, I just want to thank our panelists from that point. Up next, we are working on a NFT section of our program where we're looking to demystify cryptocurrency and non-fungible tokens. And we'll be doing that with the collaboration of Guap Coin, which is a Black-owned, Black woman-owned cryptocurrency. If you just do a Google search for the word Guap, G-U-A-P, coin, you'll see that this coin's been featured in Yahoo, on Forbes, and is one of the more prominent coins to come up here in the past couple of years. So with that, we'll be working with the Guap Foundation inside of the virtual space. Also looking at just $20 where you can invest in this in the cryptocurrency and use that as a precursor to an NFT auction that we'll be having that'll start this afternoon and go on till Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we have an amazing artist, Mr. Keith Cross of Day Black and Other Points of Work, who has been very gracious and donated 6 pieces of art that over the course of this series will turn into a non-fungible token and have as an open communal auction. And from that, proceeds from this auction not only will support the artists, but will support the Guap Foundation in creating the next step of their cryptocurrency infrastructure, as well as using this as an infrastructure, as a educational tool for anyone who, for a modest amount, wants to understand and interpret with actual engineers, actual investors, actual programs, and actual ownership, from how we can work in cryptocurrency and NFTs, but have experts from the African diaspora be a part of that conversation. In addition, we're also kicking off our Subsume music. Well, no, let me say we do have music, but we're actually kicking off our Subsume movie festival, where we have an eclectic mix of shorts, features, as well as young filmmakers that will be showcasing over the course of Creative Juneteenth. And with that, also we have a collaboration with Currents FM, who is broadcasting out of Nairobi, Kenya. That has a World Music Fest that's going on right as we speak. And you can listen to them as part of the Currents FM programming that is also within that virtual space. So again, we've got a lot of points of program that you can also find for the next 2 days on our website, subsumesummit.com. Again, that's subsumesummit.com, where again, all of our programming, you'll be able to follow up with all of the events from this point forward. And again, as we roll into the next phase of Subsume, we'll make sure that videos and engagements like you just saw from the fantastic Tales of Wakanda are available there, as well as on our shared social channels. So with that, we appreciate it. If you will like and subscribe, also feel free to share and vibe with us on this Creative Juneteenth. So again, we're looking at celebrating our creative freedoms, the ability to tell our stories with agency and with a lens towards the future of shared togetherness for the African diaspora and beyond. So for everyone, for this particular day, we're going to take it to the virtual here for this next point. We absolutely want to make sure that the word of Subsume as a brand, as a point for collaboration and for community, is that intersection of technology, creativity, and community. 3 of the key components that we think for story and for agency is a necessity for marginalized voices, people of color, and for folks who simply want the best of content and culture. So with that, it's been a pleasure to kick this point off. And there's so much content tomorrow. It'd be a whole show talking about what we have there. So I would strongly suggest just visit us at subsumesummit.com. We got a fantastic site that has all kinds of things that we'll go over tomorrow. We will be doing a donation to Amalgam Comics as they do a reopening of their space in Philadelphia. I would be remiss. I'm going to just not give enough credit to everyone. So I'm going to say visit us there. I'm going to keep it succinct as we again go to our virtual space and gamer job. If you look on our website, the link is there, as well as on your tickets. If you went to our Eventbrite and registered for that complimentary or for that donation level ticket, we'll have everything set from there. Our services will start right at about 10 o'clock tomorrow. We'll have an early convocation and appreciation of the actual day of Juneteenth. From there, we'll look to begin our programming at 10 o'clock with a Juneteenth educational review from the Schomburg Museum in Harlem. So we'll have a conversation with a couple of their scholars to kick off today, commemorate the occasion, be able to bring some education and awareness as a point to start the day, and then a fantastic run of show until midnight tomorrow night, Eastern Standard Time. And with that, we also run into Father's Day, where again, we want to make sure that we have a constant and consistent appreciation for the fathers of all points and all spaces and in all relationships, that we get a chance to honor and commemorate them as well. So we'll be running our programming from 10 o'clock until about 6 or 7 on that day as well. So with that, we again have our NFT auction that will end at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time that Sunday. Again, we'll be running our movies, our film festival for all 3 days. And again, a full mix of content, talent, and community on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. So with that, This is Dejan Sneed, and I really appreciate you and your time and attention. And again, welcome to Creative Juneteenth. Thank you so very much, and please enjoy the rest of the show.